Several years ago, Owen asked me what my favorite verse was in the Bible. He was surprised until I told him why. And then this last Sunday evening, we had a service going over Old Testament highlights, and the first verse that we read was the same verse. And then at the end of that, Reagan gave his lesson in short invitation, and he started off with that same verse, Genesis 1:1. And my point there is there's some important verses that a lot of us look at, say this is an important verse. There's also a lot of, as we've been going through the Old Testament, a lot of individual verses that really struck me. And so I thought I would take some of those and go over that this evening. And I started jotting a couple notes down. I had a couple pages of notes, verses, and I said, we can't do all that. So that's not going to work. So I picked uh, two, two here. I'm going to read Jeremiah 1, verse 9 and 10, and then one other passage, and I'll make some comments on those. Uh, Jeremiah 1, verse 9. Then the Lord put out his hand and touched my mouth. And the Lord said to me, Behold, I have put my words in your mouth. See, I have set you this day over nations and over kingdoms, to pluck up and to break down, to destroy and to overthrow, to build and to plant. A couple of thoughts that really struck me there. The words that we have in the Bible here are the literal words of God, not his general thoughts. Uh, if you hopefully you have that thought. If you don't, you need to follow up on that a little bit more. Also, God's people can do some really great and important things. Uh, God was really doing it here, but God had Jeremiah, and you look at what Jeremiah is going to be doing. These are huge things that we normally say that's impossible to do. When you look through the story of Jeremiah and look at this list, actually Jeremiah started talking about all those things. A number of those things he never saw. They happened. He got them all going, but they were off in the future and he never saw that. And that can happen when we're working with God. But when we're working today, sometimes we're doing things, we don't necessarily all the time see the immediate effect that that's having, but sometimes what we're doing has an effect, and it's often we don't see it. Happens in the future. That doesn't mean it's not having an effect or not working. Jeremiah ended up doing these things, but if you don't see how that passage is working, that's another thought or place worth exploring. The second passage I wanted to look at, a lot of you are familiar with it. If for no other reason, Andrew just talked about it. Ezekiel 47. I'm just going to read 1 through 6. That'll be the last passage I read. Ezekiel 47. Then he brought me back to the door of the temple, and behold, water was issuing from below the threshold of the temple toward the east, where the temple faced east. The water was flowing down from below the south end of the threshold of the temple, south of the altar. Then he brought me out by way of the north gate and led me around to the outside of the outer gate that faces towards the east. And behold, the water was trickling out on the south side. Going eastward with a measuring line in his hand, the man measured 1,000 cubits and then led me through the water, and it was ankle deep. And again, he measured 1,000 and led me through the water, and it was knee deep. Again, he measured 1,000 and then led me through the water, and it was waist deep. Again, he measured 1,000, and it was a river that I could not pass through, for the water had risen. It was deep enough to swim in, a river that could not be passed through. And he said to me, Son of man, have you seen this? When I read this, I think of God's blessings are more than we can possibly imagine. Uh, if you have a little trickle starting out and it goes out and spreads out, it doesn't get bigger. It spreads out into almost nothing. Pretty soon it's gone. But here it's spreading out and it gets deeper. It spreads out wider more, and it's even deeper still. I think God's blessings work this way. But those are the two passages. Um, this invitation is not talking about baptism because most everybody here, I think, is a Christian already. The point I'd like to make from these two verses is that to do great things, to receive all the blessings I think God has for us, we need to really commit to following God 100%. And we're starting a new year right now. This would be a good time to decide to, this next year, in 2026, I'm going to do everything I can for the Lord. And that's the invitation. It's not so much to be baptized because you've been baptized, but this is a good time. And you think about those two passages, and you can go on to a stack of other passages too. They only work, you're only going to accomplish these things if you're committed 100%, as Jeremiah was. You're only going to receive these blessings that I see in Ezekiel if you're committed 100%. And so that's my challenge for this new year.